I've been working overnights at Walmart for 6 months, and I've learned that the store doesn't actually close at midnight. We just lock the doors and pretend it does. The first few weeks, I thought the nocturnal customers were employees from other departments. They'd appear around 2 or 3 in the morning, walking the aisles with carts, selecting items with quiet focus. I'd nod at them while restocking shelves. They'd nod back. Normal enough, except that I never saw them leave, and when I mentioned them to my manager during shift change, she looked at me like I'd asked her to explain calculus. "We're the only ones here after midnight," she said, scanning her clipboard. "Just you, me, and the guy in receiving." But I'd seen at least 4 people that night. A woman in the cereal aisle spending 20 minutes comparing boxes. A man in automotive who stood motionless in front of the oil filters for so long I circled back twice to see if he needed help. He was gone the 3rd time, but his cart was still there, half full. I started paying closer attention. The overnight shoppers followed patterns. They appeared in the same sections, bought similar items, moved with the same unhurried deliberation. The woman always went to cereal first, then frozen foods, then cleaning supplies. The man in automotive always started at oil filters, then moved to wiper blades, then disappeared somewhere near the back of the store. There were others too. A teenager who only ever looked at video games without touching them. An elderly person who walked the pharmacy section in slow, measured loops. None of them ever approached the registers. None of them ever spoke. And none of them were ever there when I arrived for my shift or when I left in the morning. I asked the receiving guy about them during a break. He was eating a sandwich in the back room, scrolling through his phone, and when I described what I'd been seeing, he stopped mid-chew. "You don't talk to them," he said. "I haven't." "Good, don't." He went back to his sandwich, and I knew better than to push it. But curiosity got the better of me. One night, around 3, I followed the cereal woman. She went through her usual route, and I stayed a few aisles over, pretending to face products while tracking her movement. She spent exactly 12 minutes in frozen foods, selecting the same items she always did: peas, corn, a lasagna, vanilla ice cream. Then she headed toward cleaning supplies, and I moved to intercept her path, planning to just walk past, maybe make eye contact, see if she'd acknowledge me. She turned the corner ahead of me, cartwheels squeaking on the polished floor. When I rounded the aisle 2 seconds later, it was empty. The cart was there. The items were there. But she was gone. I stood in that aisle for 5 minutes, listening to the hum of the fluorescent lights and the distant buzz of the refrigeration units. The store felt bigger at night, the ceiling higher, the aisles longer. I could see all the way to the far wall. There was nowhere she could have gone that quickly. I checked the cameras later, during my lunch break, pulling up the footage from the overnight hours. My manager left the security office unlocked, and I'd learned where she kept the password. The video showed me restocking, showed me walking the aisles, showed me standing in cleaning supplies, staring at nothing. There was no woman, no cart, no one but me. I should have quit then. Instead, I started documenting. I kept a notebook in my locker and wrote down everything I saw: times, locations, descriptions. The overnight shoppers kept their schedules. They were reliable in a way that felt almost comforting. I knew when the automotive man would appear, knew the teenager's route through electronics, knew that the elderly person would complete exactly 4 loops of the pharmacy before vanishing near the vitamin aisle. And then one night, about 2 weeks ago, I saw myself. I was restocking paper towels in aisle 7 when I caught movement in my peripheral vision. Someone at the far end, near the registers. I looked up and saw a person in a Walmart vest, pushing a cart, examining products on the shelves. The vest was the same color as mine. The posture was familiar. Even from a distance, I recognized the way they moved. I walked toward them, slowly, telling myself it was just another employee I hadn't met yet, someone from a different shift covering an unusual schedule. But the closer I got, the more details aligned. The height, the build, the way they tilted their head when reading labels. They turned down the cereal aisle before I could close the distance. I ran. Not sprinting, but moving fast enough that my footsteps echoed. When I reached cereal, the aisle was empty. No cart, no person. Just rows of boxes under humming lights. I checked the cameras again. The footage showed me restocking paper towels, showed me walking quickly toward the front of the store, showed me standing alone in the cereal aisle. But this time, I watched longer. I let the footage run, and 20 minutes later, a figure appeared near the registers. The angle wasn't perfect, and the timestamp on the video was labeled with tomorrow's date, but I could see enough. They wore my vest. They moved like me. They were shopping. I've started writing my schedule in the notebook too. When I arrive, when I take breaks, when I restock each section. I checked this morning, comparing my notes to the patterns I've been tracking, and the overnight version of me keeps perfect time, always appearing 2 hours after I start my shift, always following the same route, always disappearing near the back of the store where the cameras have blind spots. Tomorrow I'm scheduled to work a double. My manager asked me to cover the evening shift too, so I'll be here from 4 in the afternoon until 8 in the morning. I'm writing this during my lunch break, sitting in my car in the parking lot, trying to think through what happens if I'm here when I'm supposed to appear. If the overnight version of me shows up while I'm still working. I keep telling myself it won't, that maybe the pattern will break, that whatever is happening only occurs when the shifts are separate. But I've been checking the notebook, and I've been here for 6 months now. The overnight version of me has been appearing for 6 months too, shopping the same aisles, following the same routine, never leaving. My manager just called. She wants me to come back early, says they're short-staffed, and I need to start the overnight portion now instead of waiting until midnight. That would put me here at the exact time I'm supposed to appear. I'm heading back inside. There's a section in the back of our Walmart that doesn't match the planogram, and no one talks about why we keep restocking it. It's in the far corner of the store, past the clearance racks and the seasonal overflow, tucked behind a display of discounted Halloween decorations that haven't been moved in 3 years. The shelves hold normal products, canned soup, paper plates, dish soap, batteries, but they're all brands I've never heard of. Summit Valley green beans, Clearbrook bathroom tissue, Hillcrest laundry detergent. The labels look professional enough, with nutrition facts and barcodes, but when I've tried scanning them at the register out of curiosity, they don't exist in the system. I only noticed it 2 months into working here. Most employees avoid that corner entirely, citing the long walk or bad lighting, but I was tasked with doing a full store inventory count and couldn't skip sections just because they felt inconvenient. When I asked my supervisor about the products, she glanced at her clipboard and told me to count everything, write it down, and don't worry about the system not recognizing some items. Some of our suppliers use temporary codes, she said, which didn't make sense but also didn't seem worth arguing about. The next week, I was assigned to restock that section. The products arrived on pallets like everything else, delivered during the overnight truck shipments, wrapped and labeled with our store number. But the distribution center code was different, a sequence I'd never seen on any other shipment. When I looked it up later, the code didn't correspond to any warehouse in our region. I restocked according to the labels on the shelves. Everything had a specific spot, a specific quantity. 12 cans of Summit Valley corn, 8 bottles of Hillcrest fabric softener, 24 rolls of Clearbrook paper towels. The precision felt excessive for products that I'd never seen anyone buy, except people did buy them. Not customers exactly, or at least not customers I ever saw shopping, but every few days when I'd return to restock the section, items would be missing. Never the entire shelf, just enough to notice. 3 cans gone here, 2 bottles there. The gaps were always clean, no disarray, as if someone had carefully selected exactly what they needed and left the rest perfectly aligned. I started checking the sales reports. That section of the store generated no revenue, 0 transactions. The computer showed the inventory levels I'd counted, showed the restocking I'd done, but never showed a single sale. I mentioned this to another employee, someone who'd worked here for almost a decade. We were on break, sitting in the back room, and I'd meant it as a casual observation, maybe even a joke about the store's accounting software. He stopped eating and looked at me for a long moment. "You've been restocking that section?" Yeah, for a few weeks now. Why? He didn't answer, just wadded up his sandwich wrapper, tossed it in the trash, and told me his break was over even though we both had 15 minutes left. After that, I started paying more attention. I'd restock the section in the afternoon, then find excuses to walk past it later in my shift. The products would still be there at 6, still there at 8. But by closing time, some would be gone. Not many, not enough to be alarming, just enough to maintain the pattern. So I stayed late one night, told my manager I wanted to get ahead on freight for the next day's delivery. She seemed pleased, said I could stay as long as I needed, and left me with the keys to lock up when I finished. I positioned myself in the clearance section, behind a rack of winter coats marked down to $5, with a clear view of the corner. The store lights dimmed automatically after closing, leaving just the emergency lighting, and the shadows stretched long across the floor. I waited. Around 1 in the morning, I heard a cart. The distinctive rattle of wheels on polished concrete, the slight squeak of one bad bearing. It came from the front of the store, moving slowly, deliberately. I leaned forward, trying to see around the coat rack. The cart appeared at the end of the aisle. No one was pushing it. It rolled forward on its own, navigating the corner with smooth precision, stopping in front of the Clearbrook bathroom tissue. I watched as a 12-pack lifted from the shelf, rotated in the air, and settled into the cart. Then the cart moved again. 3 cans of Summit Valley corn, a bottle of Hillcrest dish soap, 8 batteries. The cart made its way through the section, selecting items with the same careful consideration I'd seen in the missing inventory. When it finished, it turned and rolled back toward the front of the store, wheels squeaking softly, items stacked neatly inside. I followed it. I kept my distance, staying in the shadowed aisles, listening to the sound of the cart moving through the empty store. It went past electronics, past sporting goods, past the checkouts with their darkened registers. It stopped near the entrance, just inside the sliding doors, and then someone stepped forward to meet it. I couldn't see them clearly. The emergency lighting created too many shadows, and they stood just outside the brightest spots. But they were human-shaped, normal height, normal proportions. They began removing items from the cart, placing them in bags they must have brought with them. I moved closer, edging along the customer service counter, trying to get a better angle. They finished bagging their items and turned toward the door. For just a moment, as they passed under one of the emergency lights, I saw their face. It was mine. Not similar, not resembling. Mine. Same features, same expression, same scar on the left eyebrow from a childhood accident. They looked right at me, made eye contact, and smiled. Then they walked through the locked sliding doors as if they weren't there and disappeared into the parking lot. I stood at the entrance for 20 minutes, staring at the glass, replaying what I'd seen. Eventually, I went to check the corner section. The items were gone, the gaps on the shelves matching what I'd watched being loaded into the cart. I've been restocking that section for 6 weeks now. The pattern continues. Items disappear. The pallets arrive. I count the inventory and write it down and never ask questions. Last week, my manager told me they're promoting me to overnight supervisor, said I've shown dedication, reliability, that I'm exactly the kind of employee they need for the after-hours shift. I'll be working alone most nights, responsible for receiving the shipments, organizing the stock, making sure everything gets to where it needs to go. She handed me a new badge with my name on it and a list of sections I'll be managing. The corner section is at the top. I start in 3 days, and I've been looking at the inventory sheets she gave me. The products listed are all normal brands: Campbell's, Bounty, Tide, Duracell, the kinds of things people actually buy. But there's a note at the bottom, handwritten in neat print. Special inventory will be marked for Section J restock as indicated. Do not enter into the system. Section J is the corner. I looked at the planogram for that area, the layout I'll be expected to maintain. It shows all the same products I've been restocking for weeks. Summit Valley, Clearbrook, Hillcrest, brands that don't exist anywhere except on those shelves. There's one more line on the note, almost too small to read. Overnight shoppers have priority access. Do not interfere. I asked my manager what that meant. She smiled and said every store has customers with unique needs, and part of excellent service is accommodating everyone. I'm writing this on my last day shift. Tomorrow, I start overnights. The same shift where the cart moves on its own, where items disappear, where someone with my face walks through locked doors. My manager just brought me another document to sign. Standard overnight supervisor agreement, she said. I skimmed it, mostly liability waivers and scheduling confirmations, but there was a clause near the end about maintaining inventory for recurring customers with established access. I signed it. What else was I supposed to do? This is a good job. The pay is decent. Benefits are solid. And I keep thinking about the way they looked at me. The version of me in the parking lot. They weren't surprised. They weren't scared. They looked like someone who'd been doing this for a very long time. My Walmart's intercom system has been making announcements for a store that doesn't exist, and I'm the only one who seems to notice. It started small. Little discrepancies in the pre-recorded messages that play throughout the day. Attention shoppers, will be closing in 30 minutes, would come on at 9:30, which was correct. But then the voice would add, please make your way to the designated exits on the north and south ends of the building. Our store only has exits on the east and west sides. I pointed it out to a coworker during a shift, laughing about the mistake, assuming corporate had sent us the wrong audio files. She looked at me like I'd grown a second head. It said east and west, she insisted. I was certain I'd heard north and south, but we were busy and I let it drop. Figured I'd misheard, that my brain had been running on autopilot and scrambled the directions. Easy enough to happen during an 8-hour shift of scanning items and dealing with customers. But then it happened again. An announcement about a spill in aisle 12, requesting maintenance to the cleaning supplies section. Our store only has 10 aisles. I was standing right there, looking at the numbers painted on the floor, counting them to make sure I wasn't losing my mind. 1 through 10, no aisle 12. I asked the maintenance guy when he walked past, did you hear that announcement? Yeah, spill in aisle 7, heading there now. It said 12. He shrugged. You probably heard the aisle number and whatever else they were saying got mixed up in your head. Happens to me all the time. I started listening more carefully. Every announcement, every automated message, every time that calm, professional voice came through the speakers, I'd stop what I was doing and focus on the exact words. Most were normal. Exactly what you'd expect. But at least once per shift, something would be wrong. References to departments we didn't have, locations that didn't match our layout, sale prices on items I couldn't find in our inventory system, and no one else heard it. I tested this carefully, waiting until an announcement played and then immediately asking whoever was nearby what they'd just heard. Their version was always different from mine. Always correct for our store. I thought maybe I was having auditory hallucinations. Stress, lack of sleep, too much caffeine. I made a doctor's appointment, saw my primary care physician, explained what was happening. She ran tests, checked my hearing, asked about my mental health history, and eventually concluded that I was fine but should probably get more rest and consider therapy if the stress from work was becoming overwhelming. I tried to let it go. Tried to ignore the announcements, just nod along when they played and get back to work, but they kept getting more specific. Attention team members, we need a carry out to the garden center for a customer with a large furniture purchase. We don't have a garden center, never have. The space where it would logically be located is just more parking lot. Price check needed at register 24 for the seasonal holiday items. We have 12 registers. Maintenance to the second floor restrooms, please. Our store is single level. I started recording them. I'd pull out my phone whenever I heard an announcement starting, hit record, and capture the audio. Then, I'd play it back later, listening through headphones to make sure I'd heard what I thought I'd heard. Every recording was normal. The correct aisles, the correct departments, the correct store layout. Whatever I was hearing in real time wasn't making it onto the recordings. That should have been the end of it. Should have been proof that something was malfunctioning in my brain, not the intercom system. But I couldn't shake the feeling that the announcements were describing a real place. The details were too consistent, too specific. The same extra aisles, the same non-existent departments, the same phantom second floor. I went to the local library and looked up the history of our store location. The building was constructed in 2003, built on land that had previously been a shopping plaza. Before that, in the 1970s and 80s, there had been a different store, a two-level department store called Morrison's, that had gone bankrupt in the early 90s and sat vacant for years before being demolished. I found old photographs. Morrison's had a garden center. It had 28 registers. It had 12 shopping aisles instead of 10. The announcements I was hearing matched Morrison's layout exactly. I convinced myself this was just coincidence, my brain pulling details from something I'd subconsciously seen or heard about the location's history. But then I heard an announcement that made my skin go cold. Attention shoppers, we're experiencing a minor emergency on the second floor. Please remain calm and proceed to the nearest stairwell in an orderly fashion. I was shelving items in aisle 4 when it played. I stopped listening, waiting to see if there would be more information. The intercom clicked off, and the store continued as normal around me. Customers shopping, employees restocking, the usual ambient noise of a weekday afternoon. Then I heard the screaming. It was faint, distant, coming from above, from the ceiling. Dozens of voices, panicked and overlapping, shouting words I couldn't quite make out. The sound of running footsteps, something heavy falling, an alarm blaring. I looked around. No one else reacted. A customer walked past me, humming to herself, examining jars of pasta sauce. An employee pushed a cart of returns toward the front, whistling. The screaming continued for maybe 30 seconds, then cut off abruptly. The intercom clicked back on. Attention shoppers, the situation has been resolved. Thank you for your patience. Morrison's values your safety and appreciates your continued patronage. Morrison's, not Walmart. The voice had said Morrison's. I went home early that day, told my manager I was feeling sick. Spent the evening searching for information about Morrison's, specifically about any incidents or emergencies. I found an article from 1989, buried in the archives of the local newspaper's website. There had been a fire on the second floor, started in the electronics department, spread quickly due to old wiring and poor fire suppression systems. 32 people were injured, 11 died, most from smoke inhalation, trapped in the stairwells when the alarm system malfunctioned and sent confused messages about which exits to use. The article included a timeline. The fire started at 2:47 p.m. on a Wednesday afternoon. I checked the timestamp on my phone from when I'd heard the announcement about the emergency. 2:47 p.m. Wednesday. I've been keeping detailed logs since then. Every announcement that doesn't match our store, I write down the time, the exact wording, and any sounds I hear afterward. The pattern is consistent. Once per shift, sometimes more, the intercom describes Morrison's instead of Walmart. And increasingly, I hear things that correspond to that other store. Footsteps on a second floor that doesn't exist. Conversations in departments we don't have. The distant ding of an elevator that was never installed in our building. Yesterday, I heard my own voice on the intercom. It wasn't an announcement. It was just me, talking to someone, my words slightly muffled as if I were speaking through a bad phone connection. I was saying something about needing to check the inventory in the garden center, asking if they'd seen the shipment that was supposed to arrive that morning. I wasn't near any intercom equipment. I was standing in the cereal aisle, completely alone. But I could hear myself talking, my voice echoing through the store, discussing work in a garden center that doesn't exist, looking for a shipment I never ordered. I touched my throat. I wasn't speaking. My mouth was closed. The intercom version of me kept talking, and I listened to myself describe walking to the second floor, taking the stairs near the back of the store, passing through the furniture department to get to the outdoor section. Then I heard footsteps behind me. I turned around and there was no one there. But the footsteps continued, and they were climbing, going up. I'm writing this in my car in the parking lot. My shift ended 20 minutes ago, but I can't stop staring at the building. It's single level, flat roof, no second floor. But I can see lights in windows that aren't there, movement behind glass that doesn't exist. The intercom voice is playing an announcement right now. I can hear it from here, through my closed car windows, too far away to make out the words, but close enough to recognize the tone. Calm, professional, routine. My phone is ringing. Unknown number. I answered it without thinking. It's the intercom voice. My manager's voice, but not quite right, slightly distant, asking me if I'm still planning to come in for my shift tomorrow. I told her I already worked today. My shift just ended. She laughed, that polite, confused laugh people do when they think you're joking. Tomorrow's your first day, she said. We're all excited to have you on the team at Morrison's. I hung up. I'm looking at my employee badge right now. It says Walmart. My hire date is 6 months ago, but when I turn it over, there's a faint impression on the back, like something was printed there and worn away over time. I can barely make it out, but the logo is different. Morrison's department store, Este 1972.